Hey YouTube, Coppersan here. Huge changes are happening once again in the MapleStory Korea Test client, shaking up the meta with buffs, nerfs and changes all across the board. No class is getting spared. Some classes are getting spared from this video though, as my daughter is waking up again in a few hours and I do need my beauty sleep. Those grey hairs, they just keep on coming. There also are some big UI changes with this update, changing how the game looks. Check this out. I think it takes some getting used to. It actually reminds me a lot of the UI in MapleStory Mobile. What do you think of this UI? The new enhancing window does look pretty good though, I think. Anyway, class changes. Oh boy, some classes are eating very good tonight while others are getting their food taken away from them. We can't all win, it seems. A bigger and more general change is that now every single class is now a 2-minute class. Congratulations, we can all now burst around the same time. This means that for a lot of classes their skill damage got adjusted downwards a little bit, or their skill durations to match with the lower cooldown. A lot of skills went from 180 seconds to 120 seconds, or 90 seconds to 60 seconds, etc, etc. I think for most classes though, this doesn't really result in any net gain or loss. Also, and this one I really like, finally, the cooldowns for most summons were removed, unless it's like a really good or powerful summon like Cannoneer's Rolling Rainbow, even though if I remember correctly that skill did get its cooldown reduced from 90 seconds to 60 seconds. But think about skills like Wild Hunter the summons, Michiel's Shield summon, Iron's Polearm summon, etc, etc. Those type of summons, they now have no more cooldown. So if a boss moves or if you mess up placing a summon when grinding, you can just move it instantly. Ada Shower and Soul Janus still have their cooldowns though. A lot of classes also got a rush-like skill and more mobility, and even some classes got additional invincibility frames and much more. Let's go over all the classes with the biggest changes. For the complete list, I left a link in the top comment linking you to the MapleStory Korea Test client update notes. Just keep in mind that those are unfortunately in Korean. Heroes got some nice changes to their Flash Blade skill. It can now be used up to 2 times, even when there aren't any monsters around, and Rage no longer reduces the amount of monsters your skills can hit. This actually goes for all classes with similar skills, by the way, like the Battle Mage for example has a similar skill, and Michal, and some of their 6-job skills have gotten their damage buffed. Looks like Hero is a winner, and so of course is Paladin. The best class in the game is getting even better, gaining 20 attack power, 3% more final damage and 2% more critical damage from various buffed passive skills. Mighty Mjolnir now also has a new mode that allows you to summon the Hammer of all ancient gods. Not sure what that does, but it sure sounds epic. Skipping a bit to the Fire Poison mages, their 5th skill Poison Nova now does a lot more damage. The blast damage was increased from 450% to a massive 1350%, and their Elemental Fury skill has their cooldown reduced from 75 seconds to 60 seconds without losing any damage. For bishops, the big change is that their stat increase from skills based on how much int they have that has been removed, and those buffs are now made passive. For example, their Blood of the Divine skill increased final damage by 1% for every 5000 int, up to 15%, but now the skill just gives 15% final damage always. The damage increase from the skill though was reduced from 20% to 15%. And that basically goes for all the skills, so everything that was buffing your stats with int now just gives a flat passive buff right away. Really nice for those weaker bishops. Bowmasters are also enjoying some nice buffs. Storm of Arrows went from 1400% to 1500% damage. At least I think this skill is Storm of Arrows. Google Translate translated it to Arrow Rain, and it's sort of like an Arrow Rain skill. Silhouette Mirage went from 800% damage to 1520% damage, and Quiver Barrage from 1300 to 1625% damage. Really nice buffs to the Bowmaster as well. Night Lords are also finally seeing their dreams come true. They're finally getting their own invincibility frame through a new skill. Spirit of the Star will get a passive boss damage buff. Shurikane is getting a small damage buff, and so is Dark Lord's Omen. Shurikane's damage went up from 560% to 675%, while the cooldown also got lowered by 5%, and Dark Lord Omen's cooldown got reduced by a massive 30 seconds, while also going up in damage from 1245% to 1375%. Some of their 6-up skills got buffed as well. Night Lords are definitely eating good tonight. Moving down a bit on the list, there is Dome Warrior, and they're having a bit more fun this update, gaining 2% critical damage and 1% final damage, and this class is now officially cracked. When the Rift of the Nation skill is active, up to 2 cracks can appear. At least that's how it used to be the case. However, this limit has been removed, meaning this class can do crack whenever they want. It looks like Nightwalkers are also getting some tiny nerfs, as as well. Nothing too serious though from first glance, like 2% less final damage and some skill damage changes. But for more in-depth advice, my advice would be to ask the class Discord after they've run their numbers. People were saying it's a bit of a nerf, but at least not a big one. Shark Week is also happening in a few months, and it shows, as everyone's favorite shark-wielding Thunderbreaker got buffed, gaining 4% final damage, 35 more attack power, and a bit more damage through various passive buffs. And this one I don't get. Errands are getting slightly nerfed. Way to kick them when they're already down next on, losing 10 attack, 3% critical damage and 1% final damage. Why? By the way, I believe for most keydown skills, new features were added so you cannot be pushed away or affected by statuses, and you take reduced damage when you use them, like Mercedes her Pupil skill and Kane his laser. And now for the creme de la creme, Master Thief Phantom has received some buffs. Is it really happening? 2025, the year of Phantom. Phantom is actually getting stronger. They can now jump when using their running with scissors skill and card storm skill. They gained a 5% critical damage. Phantom Mark's damage went up from 600% to 850%, and the Mark itself now deals 1300% damage, up from 900%. Rift Break's damage also went up from 900% to 1300%. Finally some justice for Phantom. But you can't have justice without some injustice, right? I regret to report that Blaster is blasting off with some nerfs, losing 6% critical damage, 10% boss damage, and almost all their 6-job mastery skills got nerfed. Wild Hunter though got some insane quality of life, improving things like that a Jaguar doesn't disappear when they die, which I hate, improving the lure skill, which was bad, no cooldowns on their summons, which was also bad, more mobility, that's really good, a new mode for their grenade skill, interesting, finally some love for MapleStory's favorite cat lady. The demon classes aren't looking too hot though. Demon Slayer is losing 50 attack and 7% critical damage from various passive skills getting nerfed, and Demonic Frenzy from the Demon Avenger class is getting the maximum final damage buff lowered from 20% to 13%, losing 7% final damage, and its damage got lowered from 765% to 670. Ouch. And you know, I was reading up the Kane changes, expecting buffs because for some reason that's all this class gets, and it started so well. 1% more final damage, 5 more attack, 5% more final damage from another passive skill, 5% more boss damage, 12% more damage, Dragon Burst and Fatal Blitz now also reduce damage when hit when using those skills like those other classes, which is really my only complaint with this class. But then came the bad news, Origin skill nerfed. Damage down from 830% to 600%. Those spikes that come down also lowered in damage, and crits also do less damage now, which is actually a really big nerf for this class. Probably deserved though, but still, next one please buff Kane, we're so weak now, please, we need more buffs. Looks like Angelic Buster is busting out some small buffs as well to Trinity, what I understand though from these broken English translations. I also love just how unclear the special notes are. Added a function to enhance the damage of Trinity 6 is added. Okay, but by how much? Because I'm seeing nerfs for other Trinity skills, but then this one buffs it, but they don't mention the numbers for some reason. It also looks like Zero got hit with some nerfs as well. Lots of reduced number of attacks, a 5% final damage decrease, and time holding now only makes you invincible for 10 seconds instead of 15. Some other skills did get buffed though, so not really sure what the general conclusion is on Zero. Any Zero mains in the chat that can enlighten us? And looks like Ilium almost got something like a small rework, removing the need to charge your battery with attacks it seems like, but gaining them passively over time. Ilium skill changes are also all over the place, and most Google Translate names don't really make much sense to me. I also don't know the class that well by heart, but I think it looks like there are some nice changes and an overall buff to the class, question mark. Arc though, OMG. Literally all their 6-job skills are getting their damage buffed, and like by a decent amount as well. Look at this list, nothing but buffs for our favorite edgy half spectre. A Nightmare that comes out is Devious Nightmare by the way, which is also getting a juicy buff. Good for you Arc, enjoy! I think that were most important class changes. Again, make sure to check the lists in the pinned comment. What do you think of the changes so far? Let me know in the comments. Keep in mind though that this is still a test client and things can of course still change. And that's all I had for today. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, special thanks to our members making these videos possible. Special thanks to Niels de Konik, Rama Waar, Sebastian Hanoi, Kaudi Mora, Wiley, Backspace OTI, Ziggy Deer, Flidiot, Knifesu, Cloudfix, Michael Menchaca, Ratius, Betrayal1489, Silvio Nato, Striker Elk, Riser Aru, PC Game Life, The Passenger, Max Bernhardt, Scotty Flies Fast, Only, Lord Fazil, Spatsy, Dante Victory, Snuffupop, Quinn, Dewey Tran, Vake Botnet, Megu, The Wolf Drake, Matinu Dev, Groggo, Gabriel Eck, Kani Wu, Max Mink, and Domi Kirch Nahammer. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and happy mapling.